Introducing Mr. Rajit Punhani, our esteemed guest for today's special episode of the Bigger Picture podcast by the Commerce Society at SRCC. Currently serving as the Secretary of the Rajya Sabha, Mr. Punhani, an Indian Administrative Service IAS officer, has been a driving force behind transformative initiatives, notably the launch of a pension scheme for 450 million unorganized sector workers and spearheading GST reforms. Today, Mr. Punhani joins us to share his insights and expertise, specifically discussing India's role and priorities in the G20. With a distinguished career that spans public service, corporate governance, and diplomatic representation to the European Union and the International Labour Organization, Mr. Punhani brings a unique perspective to the global stage. Stay tuned as we explore to the nuances of India's engagement in the G20 with our distinguished guest, Mr. Rajat Punhani.
Okay, so now let's dive into the presentation by Sir as he sheds light on G20 and its implication. Following the presentation, we'll also engage in a session of questions to further explore and deepen our understanding on this crucial topic. Sir, the stage is all yours, and now you can start.
Okay, first, I'd like to thank you for inviting me and for the generous introduction. So I'll start with the presentation. It will be for if there are questions, and I'll be happy to answer them. So I'll start with the presentation. I hope I won't take too much time because I'll start with the first slide. India's G20 presidency has become a symbol of inclusion both within the country and beyond, representing the spirit of Sabka Saath. It has become a people's G20. So one important characteristic of this G20 was that we held it in cities, 200 cities across India, and we involved a whole lot of stakeholders, including the general public. So I just wanted to just brief you, maybe most of you might be knowing, but I just wanted to brief you about how did G20 come across. So in the Asian financial crisis in the 1990s, after that, it was felt that the finance ministers and the governors of the central banks of the member countries would come together and discuss only financial matters. That is how it started. But slowly it got upgraded that all the heads of states would also join and they started discussing subjects besides the financial crisis. So now there are 21 members. Earlier it was G20, there were 19 countries and one European Union. Then in our presidency, the Prime Minister invited African Union to be part of the G20. And this was accepted by all the members. So now the African Union is also a member of G20. So it represents about 2/3 of the world population, but more important, it consists of 85% of the global GDP is in these 21 member countries and unions. And 75% of the global trade also is done by these members. The presidency works in a function of rotation. So every year it will change. So like right now it's India. Last year you would remember it's Indonesia when Indonesia handed over the baton. And now we would be handing over the baton in this to Brazil. So the countries are also divided into different groups and the presidency rotates among these 5 different groups. So we are, for example, in the Asian group. So the next presidency will not be from Asia, but it will be from Latin America, South America. So it's going to Brazil. So, and then the presidency doesn't function alone. The previous president and the next president, they all three, they form a troika and they then decide what will the agenda be. So during our presidency, it was Indonesia, India, and Brazil. Now in the next year, India will still be there along with Brazil and the next country that is supposed to host the G20. So the country hosting the presidency is basically responsible for the agenda. So they are the one who sets the agenda and steers it during its one-year term. It also hosts the summit and various other meetings during its term. So there are two tracks. One is the traditional original finance track, which has the finance ministers and the governors, heads of the central banks. And later, what was introduced was a Sherpa track, which is basically a track for the heads of states, the presidents and the prime ministers. So the Sherpa track is coordinated by the Sherpa, who's basically the prime minister, the president of the country chooses one person as the Sherpa. Like our Sherpa was Amitabh Khan. And then there's a finance track goes parallelly, which is there with the finance ministers and the central bank governors. Besides that, there are a number of engagement groups covering a whole lot of topics from trade to industry to environment to climate change to women development and various other sectors. So our tenure was from 1st December 2022 to 30th November 23. So it's now we're going to end on 30th November. From 1st December, Brazil will take over. Our logo, if you had seen it, it's a planet Earth with our colors of our national flag and our national flower, the lotus. Our theme was Vasudev Kundupukam, which basically meant one Earth, one family, one future. You all are aware Vasudev and Kutumb means family and Kundupukam. That's how that word comes. Significance is that it coincides with the Amrit Kal of our independence and our aim to become a developed society, a Viksit Bharat, by 2047, in which I myself am sure you youngsters will all be around in 2047. So that is a big landmark for us, 100 years of our independence, and our aim to become a developed society, a Viksit Bharat. So what were our priorities? Our priorities was one major thing was lifestyle for environment. That if you know that in our traditional lifestyle, we were very conscious, especially in our rural areas. We were very environment conscious. We would avoid too much of concrete, would avoid too much of consumption of goods which would result in greenhouse gases. So we traditional our lifestyle is that like for diyas for example we need not use electricity for diyas on Diwali. So we are trying now for the world also to adopt this kind of lifestyle for environment, where each community is responsible for having an environment, having a lifestyle that is friendly to environment. So that was one of our major priorities. The other was accelerated, inclusive, and resilient growth. All these three words are important. Accelerated, that we must grow faster. Inclusive is that it has to include everyone. It's not that the poor should get left out. So the growth should include the poor. And resilient means that if there are any disasters, for example, or any unanticipated events like COVID happened, or some earthquake or cyclones, then our growth should be able to bounce back quickly. Then is the SDGs. Most of you would be familiar with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So we have to progress on that. And technological transformation. That was one big thing, digital. So as you are aware, when the G20 leaders came, some of them were really shocked that even a sabzi wala now takes digital payments. So the amount of digital payments in India now surpasses that of China and US combined. So that technological transformation across the whole country is something which was one of our priorities. Then for multilateral institutions like for UN and WTO and the other multilateral institutions, we need to revamp them or make them forward looking, because most of these were set up about 50 years ago. So now the world has changed, especially with technology and various other things. A lot has changed. You have the gig economy, you have now a lot of things happening virtual. So the multilateral institutions also have to adapt and change for the 21st and now the for the 21st century. And women-led development was our one of our major goals, where it was not development of women. Now we want that development should be led by women. It is seen, as all of you know, if the women in the family is educated, it makes such a difference to the whole family. So in any organization also, if you see where the women is the head, there's a much more humane and efficient approach. towards everything. So now we are concentrating on women-led development, where women should lead the development of our country. So our last summit was held on from 9th to 10th September, and all the heads of countries participated. The venue was Bharat Mandapam. I don't know if how many of you have seen it, but if you haven't, you please let me know. You must go and see it. It's a beautiful venue that has been made, and we had three themes, as was mentioned earlier. One Earth. So there we had a New Delhi Declaration, which was an exceptional milestone, and it was unanimously approved. It had 83 paragraphs, but I'll just try to highlight some of them. One was the SDGs agenda, which I had mentioned. The other important thing was that today's era is not that of war. As you are aware, there are conflicts going in the world, and this just brings down development, besides a lot of other problems. So, so today's era is not of war. Again, as mentioned earlier, there should be an equitable multilateral. It should not be, in favor of the developed countries or anything of that sort. Financial inclusion, which you might all be aware of the Jan Dhan Yojana, where now everyone has an account, and we are having these direct benefit transfers where money, which earlier used to, a lot of middlemen used to corner it, now it goes directly into the account of the beneficiary or the farmer. Zero tolerance for corruption, global food security and nutrition, universal health coverage. You might be aware of this scheme of Ayushman Bharat. So we want that all the G20 members should have universal health coverage. Skills development is most important. High quality education, which you guys are getting, but it's a very few. If you look at a percentage, getting admission into SRCC is so difficult. So 99.9% people, don't get that high quality education. Green Development Pact was mentioned earlier. Lifestyle for environment was mentioned earlier. We'll be also setting up a global biofuels and alliances, and mobilize resources for climate finance. One major grouse of ours is that now when we are developing and moving towards becoming a developed country, we are now asked to, uh, follow these indicators of climate change. So that needs a lot of resources. So how do we mobilize these resources? That is very, very important. Then your ocean and marine ecosystem, cities of tomorrow. Soon you'll have more than 60% of our population, or maybe 70%, living in cities. So we'll have to now look at the cities of tomorrow. How do we make them smart in every way? And as mentioned earlier, multilateralism, the structure has to be revamped, including the UN and the WTO and other such structures. Multilateral development banks, that is related to the multilateralism. Like right now, you have World Bank and IMF. We need, different structures. Digital infrastructure I talked about, like UPI and all other digital means. Now we're having very soon 5G, and even 6G will come very soon. I think more you guys will be more conversant with AI than we are. So how do we AI for the common good? AI is extremely useful, but it also has its dangers. So how do we counter those? Then, as explained earlier, women's participation and women-led development. And another important thing was terrorism. Prime Minister emphasized this on that we cannot tolerate terrorism, and we have to condemn it in all its forms. So the not so developed countries, their voice is not heard so much. So we have to focus on their concerns and their voice. So India is now becoming the voice of the global south. So how related to that is India as a influential global player, and contributing to make India world ready and the world India ready. Now the world is also gradually recognizing that they will not be able to function without India. So we have to make the world India ready. Now, I'll just briefly touch because I'm right now Secretary of the Rajya Sabha. So, I'll briefly touch about P20. There's a G20 which all the prime ministers and president come. There's also a P20, a Parliament 20, in which the presiding officers of the Parliament, like in our case, Speaker of the Lok Sabha, he and the speakers and presiding officers of the G20 countries, they all got together in P20. This started, it is not as old, it started in 2010 in Canada, but in 2018 it was held in Argentina, and from then onwards it's become a regular feature. And with us, we take the assistance of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, which is a multilateral body based in Geneva, and they help us in organizing it. So since 2018, we've had regular uh, parliamentary speakers summit. So this gives a fresh perspective because these are the parliamentarians who come together. So various MPs, maybe of the opposition party, otherwise it becomes the head of the state is from the ruling party. So and all these are all democratic countries. So they all have a ruling party and opposition. So then the opposition MPs also have a forum to discuss their concerns along with the ruling party MPs who are not part of government. The theme is the same: Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, one family, one future. IPU, along with Parliament of India, organized this. It was in the Yasha Mention Center. This is in Dwarka. I would again suggest if you guys could visit this. If you want, I could arrange the visit. It's a beautiful convention center, which will, this was one thing that India was missing. We did not have a huge convention center where conventions, international conventions could be held. So now we have this and the Bharat Mandapam. So we expect it's a thousands of billions of dollars market where conventions are held. And now that we have the infrastructure, we are expecting that a lot of countries are booking our because we have a unique in the sense that it's very peaceful, infrastructure is good, it's a friendly country. So there are a lot of countries who want to host their international meets here. So this was held on 13th to 14th October, very recently. The agenda was SDGs, sustainable energy transitions, women-led development, as I mentioned earlier, and public digital platforms. So, Speaker Shri Om Birla and the Chairman of Rajya Sabha, who's also the Vice President, Shri Jagdeep Dhankar, they both addressed the summit, and then the joint statement was unanimously adopted, and committing ourselves to what the G20 had decided, with a little a bit of emphasis on a non-discriminatory trading system, the importance of parliament democracy, the determination of parliaments to for commitments to G20 and the the environment related COP20, and reinforce the position of the Parliament of India among the parliaments of the world. We are the largest democracy, and we have such a smooth transition of uh, power. So our democracy is very vibrant, both at all levels, at the union level, as a federal level, the state level, the provincial level, that is, and even at the third tier, the Panchayati Raj and the municipal bodies. So thank you. That's my presentation. I overshot the time a little bit, but now I'm welcome. I'm open to answering any questions you have.
So thank you, sir, for such an informative presentation. Now that we have pretty much informed us, you have pretty much informed us about the G20 and its implication on India, we would like to proceed with Q&A round.
Let's go ahead. I want to. Okay.
All right, so we would like to proceed with Q&A round, and we would be glad if you could address the doubts of our listener as well, right?
Fine. Thank you.
Okay, so sir, my first question to you is that do you think that China skipped the event because of its concerns over India Middle East Europe corridor? There have been speculations that it has been a counter to the Belt and Road Initiative by China, right? So how does that relate with the conflict with China, and what is currently the diplomatic relationship of India with China?
So we are always, open to good relations, and as was said, that it's not we prime ministers. I think time and again repeated this, and even in G20, it's not an era of war. We want to live peacefully and progress peacefully. So, but I'm not in a position to, spell out more than that. But we are very, very ready for friendly relations, and very, very clear that this is not an era of war. It is not an era of expansionism. We have to live together peacefully and progress. The focus should be on development and progress for all sections of society.
So, yeah, first of all, as I said, thank you for the informative presentation. And absolutely agreeing to what you just said regarding Yash's question, that India is looking forward to good relations, but and like we are also aiming for good relations throughout the world as one of the priorities as well stated. But we know the recent conflict between Israel and Palestine, right? And all the challenges that it comes along with the Hamas port on regarding the IMCE, the basically the Indian Middle East corridor, right? So I just want to know your opinion. What do you think? Like, has India overlooked on the challenges, on the geopolitical challenges, to be specific? And what steps can India as a country take to ensure that there's harmony and that their projects are not more so harmed because of such conflicts?
See, one aspect. This is my personal opinion, so it's not an official opinion. Is that on the one hand is one even thing we are very clear: terrorism is not to be tolerated in any form. It cannot be justified and it cannot be tolerated. That I think is very clear in our stand, even at various fora. Our political leadership has said this very clearly that we have, because we have been victims of terrorism. So we are aware of the suffering and the problem. So terrorism cannot be tolerated in whatever form and with whatever justification. At the same time, we are always ready for humanitarian, aid. We are even giving humanitarian aid there, and a humane approach. But I think one thing is clear that we cannot tolerate terrorism. So that is has to be, I think, thought about.
All right. So as Bhavik touched upon the PPT being quite insightful, and you even covered P20, which was quite informational to be honest. Initially, you talked about that Africa is now like the permanent member of G20, right? And it certainly contributes to giving the voice to the global south. So, how do you think this affects India's relationship and reputation in the global stage? So, like, what are your thoughts on this development?
This I can this I can answer. African Union it's the African Union that has been now co-opted into G20. African Union is a body. It has its headquarters in Addis Ababa, in Ethiopia, and is a union of all the African countries. Like European Union has its office in Brussels and is a union of all European countries. So Africa has been neglected a lot by the world at large, especially the developed world. You would see during COVID also, it's India which came to the help of a lot of countries, in which we provided them vaccines and various other aid. So this was a great initiative of the government to invite AU to be part of the G20. And once AU becomes a part of the G20, then all the countries in in the AU have a voice at the big table to voice their concerns, because many of the problems, for example, climate change, as I was explaining, one grouse of the less developed countries is that when they are now when the developed world was developing, and a lot of them developed through colonial exploitation. So when they were developing, then they never thought about climate change. They introduced all these technologies that all damage the climate and damage the environment. So they never thought of it at that time, and then they developed. And now they want that the south, the global south, or the less developed countries, they should now sacrifice and not use those goods or change over to technology friendly goods. So now technology friendly goods, as with any technological product, initially when it is introduced, its price is always high. It's only with time and when there's mass consumption, then the price falls. If you guys might have been very young at that time when mobile phone was first introduced in India, it used to be very expensive and talking used to be very expensive. So if you talked for a minute, it used to cost a lot of money. But now over time, now talking over mobile is so cheap. So similarly with other technology, whether it be refrigerators or computers or chips or air conditioners, they are that the technology that is more environmental friendly is much more expensive. So for a poor man, now I suppose he wants also he should not be deprived of an air conditioner. If there's global warming due to the developed countries, then why are you depriving him of an air conditioner? So he will buy an air conditioner which will be cheaper. But now that cheap air conditioner may be more environmental, less friendly. So why should he be punished for it? So that is one, grouse of the global south is that when we are developing, so that's why they are saying either you transfer to us the new technologies which are environmental friendly, or you finance the African countries and the less developed countries to develop these technologies and give some time, you know. So you should lower your environmental harmful consumption and give us some time to do it. So that is the basic, struggle between the north and the south.
So my next question to you is that can the occurrence of G20 event being attended by global leaders in states like Kashmir and Arunachal Pradesh promote more political stability in such states and just increase India's stance in the such conflicting states basically?
Definitely, definitely. In Jammu and Kashmir, because I've dealt with that officially also. In Jammu and Kashmir, there was a time where there used to be objections to international summits being held there. So this time to have the G20 there was I would say a big step, and it also leads to the development of the region. Like if you have any event there, then there are lots of income is generated, then jobs are generated. So there's a lot of activity, and the local people benefit a lot in terms of their income also. So that is one aspect, that the development of the local area. Plus, it becomes open to international summits, and it helps in tourism. Like tourism, one is that tourists come to have a sightseeing. The other is tourism is also this convention tourism. It's a $1 million factor. Many countries, even like countries like Indonesia, they have Bali where you have hundreds of summits happening throughout the year. So the whole economy functions on tourism. So in Jammu and Kashmir and Arunachal, to have these meetings was I would say a great step and very helpful for the local population. Now Jammu and Kashmir also, it has sent a signal of how peaceful it is. So all these leaders came, and there was absolutely no problem. They all went to the markets and they roamed around freely. They could see for themselves how after the abrogation of Article 370, how much has changed in that region. And it has helped the local people also tremendously. So the local people, everyone wants that they also should be able to progress. Every person he wants to provide better education to his children. He wants a better standard of living. So he has to earn money. Now, if you have a disturbed area, like you were describing Palestine and Israel, now you have a disturbed area, how will the person, increase his income? Every day he has to fear for his life. So now the local people in Jammu Kashmir are also realizing that there has to be peace for them to for them to progress economically, for their children to have a better education, a better life. So that is one big factor.
Thank you, sir, for answering that question. My next question to you is that, like, despite having doubts from international media about India's capability of successfully hosting G20 and regarding Declaration 2, what's your perspective on the assumption made by the made against India by the international media historically also and like in present time also?
This is my again personal opinion. International media, many of them are unfortunately influenced by other factors, and many times they give an incorrect picture. All of us live here; we know what is the scene here, but they exaggerate the bad parts and they lay down the good aspects. So international media, but I think G20 played a major role. Now at least a lot of um, foreign journalists came this time. They went traveled all across the country, and they saw for themselves what is happening. We are not perfect. No one is perfect. Neither is the US or any developed country perfect. But they can see the reality for themselves. Otherwise, many times, by many of us Indians and many foreigners, for their own interests, for their own corporate interests, for other interests, they want to project India in a bad light for whatever trade reasons, very business reasons they have. So G20 provided an opportunity that it was open. You can come and see for yourself. Everything was absolutely quite perfect in every way, right from the law and order, the infrastructure, the delegates came. Even for the P20, the delegates came. They saw our new building. They had a nice dinner in the open here, and they saw Yashobhumi, which was our new convention center. So they saw for themselves various parts. A lot of them went and traveled, after the summit. They traveled across India, so they saw for themselves. So this creates a big impression because these are thought leaders. Most of these delegates that come for these meetings, they're all thought leaders. So when they go back to their country, they talk to journalists and they tell them that this is the reality. This is the true picture.